Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan, and I'm here from the Leather Elves, and I'm here with Jack Pine from High Red Bird. Happy 2022, Jack. How are you? Are you back? You're back. Jack's sending us signals. Hmm. Well, okay, so 2022 can't start off without a few glitches. It's been a while, you guys, since we've been live, so bear with us. Jack's having Oh, we wanted to announce Diane Allen. I've talked to Diane. Diane is our winner for 2022 of free toys for a year. Congratulations, Diane. We're going to get that all set up. Jack, are we back?
Yeah, I can hear you. And yeah, we're good. We're good. New year, same ineptitude with technology here, but I'm trying.
Did you get new technology or is it the same old technology and it's just we haven't improved any?
I am not going to answer that because it makes me feel bad about myself.
Oh no, you should never feel bad about yourself. Maybe we need to
Mm.
set goals for us about how to, be better technologically. I don't know. Hmm.
I mean, goals should always be attainable, Robin.
True. Very true. All right. So let's get started. We've got some reminders, I'm sure, Jack.
Yep, we are going to go into a fun session of how to move forward with your goals tonight. But we do want to remind you guys, if you have not already liked the Leather Elves page on Facebook, you want to make sure that you do that because we do these live streams every single Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, as long as it's not like a major holiday. We hope you guys have missed us since we weren't here the last 2 weeks with live streams. We've definitely missed you guys. Recording things, putting them together for you is nice. We definitely want to make sure you have those resources available, but it's not the same. So make sure that you like the Leather Elves page on Facebook. That way you can come on every single Friday for our Friday Night Flock Talks at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can be a part of the conversation. It makes it all the more fun for me and Robin. It makes it all the more educational for everyone else who is watching as well, because so many of you have different birds, different experiences, different setups, and we can definitely all learn from each other. Now, if you miss one of our Friday Night Flock Talks, first of all, Robin and I will be very sad. But you can always catch up. We do have all of the Friday Night Flock Talks available in a playlist on the High Redbird YouTube channel. So if you go over there, you can subscribe to that channel. That way, any of the videos we have done, you can have easy access to. You can binge watch them as part of a playlist. I also put together other things such as the very, very fun, kind of challenging Avian Advent Calendar playlist. 25 days of making a brand new toy every single day. There's tips and tricks and tutorials on building your own toys for your animals, developing your enrichment program, how to keep things nice and clean, make it easier, different ways to just enjoy your animals. So we definitely want to encourage you guys to do that as well. Now, if you'd like to see a little bit more of Robin and I, and let's be honest, who wouldn't? You can, of course, follow us on Instagram as well, either the Leather Elves or High Red Bird. And I say either, but it should be and the Leather Elves and High Red Bird. You want to make sure you're following both. We put up a ton of fun content. We'll always give you guys a preview of what that week's Friday Night Flock Talk will be covering. So you'll know the general topics, some bullet points that'll be included, but we also share things like fun photos and videos of different animals engaging with enrichment. I like to post a lot of fun baby animals because everybody loves them. So there's a lot of really fun content that you can get over there on the Instagram page. We also want to remind everybody that coming up in just a few weeks, three
Yeehaw!
3 weeks, 3 weeks. You can you hear the excitement and anxiety in my voice? We have the National Parrot Rescue and Preservation Foundation's annual Parrot Festival. This is an event that has been going on for more than 20 years. It is going to be January 28th, 29th, and 30th in Houston, Texas. If you'd like to find out more about that event, you can, of course, visit www.parrotfestival.org. We also encourage you guys right now, if you haven't already, you want to make sure that you like NPRPF Parrot Festival on Facebook every single day for the month of January. You'll be getting a sneak peek at a different facet of Parrot Festival. Things like our speakers, our vendors, how the conference works, the special things that we have included as part of Parrot Festival. We're really, really excited about it. Robin and I are both on the board of directors for the National Parrot Rescue and Preservation Foundation. And that name really is a mouthful. That's why we usually just say NPRPF. Um, the NPRPF Parrot Festival is a fun 3-day educational conference. We have speakers from all over the world. We have some of the best vendors of parrot toys selling a wide variety of different things that you may want: cages, perches, food, toys, so many fun things that are all going to be bird themed. But probably my favorite part. We really have a community, a flock, if you will, of bird enthusiasts who can definitely be a part of your flock. You can have those resources to help give you a little bit of support if you're getting frustrated with your bird, which we're going to say never happens, but we know it happens. If you're getting frustrated with your bird, if you have questions about a bird, if you just want someone to talk to who isn't going to think you're completely insane because you have birds in your life, you can find those people at NPRPF Parrot Festival. Robin, is there anything I'm forgetting about Parrot Festival?
I think the community is a big part of that, and the chance to network with all those people, and the speakers are there for usually for the whole event, so that you can meet with, you can, pass them in the hallway, and if a question comes up, you can talk to them about it, maybe have lunch with someone. It's a very comfortable and educational setting. So it's a great event. And being on the board of directors is always, it's a challenge, because there's so much that happens. But Jack does an incredible job as the Parrot Festival coordinator. So I highly suggest registering and having a chance to meet with some of those people. So it's well worth the trip to Houston. All right. So any other reminders, Jack? I think we're good.
I will check the outline, but I think, yeah, we should be good with our
We are
regular
good.
reminders.
There you go. But I want to welcome everybody back to 2022. And we really wanted to thank everyone who shared their goals with us, that on the live stream from New Year's Eve. And you guys all have some very attainable goals with your animals. And I think it's just about, and what we want to talk about tonight is kind of planning that journey. How are you going to achieve those goals and not just have them be the typical New Year's Eve, perhaps alcohol induced goals? So it is, um, but I think I think that's what we're going to cover tonight. So, Jack, did you make any goals for yourself? We talked, you mentioned a goal in the live stream, but do you want to let people know what your goal was?
So one of my goals, first of all, I'm going to say setting goals is really, really important when it comes to doing anything with your animals. And I'm going to break it to you right now. You're not always going to achieve all your goals. And you're not always going to achieve your goals in the timeline that you set for yourself. But if you have a goal, that means you can determine a blueprint for what you're trying to accomplish. You can, how many things does Nick have to add to the screen? I think Nick's goal is
Nick,
he's
Nick
counting how many
outdid
things he
himself
can add
tonight.
before I get distracted.
Goal!
I
I
see
swear
Nick
Nick
achieved
stays up
his
at night
goal of
just trying
getting
to
new
torment us.
graphics.
I know, right?
Oh,
But
no.
so
Um, so one of the there's a little bit of a time delay, just a bit. Hopefully you guys don't notice. Robin and I are only what is it, 8 states apart, maybe more.
yeah, more than
I
that.
don't know. One of those states is Texas, so I mean, yeah. Um, 13 state. I don't know. There's a time difference. We're working through it. One of the goals that I had was to continue to put together educational videos, tutorials on the High Redbird YouTube channel. And I wanted to share that one because I think that's something worth doing. But I also wanted to make sure people recognize that if you have something that is working with your animal, if you have something that you like, that you're happy with, maintaining that is a goal and it is something you can feel good about. If you've built a good relationship with your bird, maintaining that relationship is a great thing to set as a goal for yourself. And I just wanted to make sure everyone knew those maintenance goals, those things that might feel like they're a little lazy, where it's like, oh no, I'm just going to keep doing this. That's not a real goal. It is. There's still work that goes into it, and it is definitely work worth doing.
Well, and I think that that's part of that is when you talk about goals, you need to talk about long term and short term. So some of them, okay, this is pretty easy breezy. I can just get this done. Some of them are long term. It may take you a year before you actually accomplish that goal. And it's really about recognizing which is which so that you're not like, why isn't this working quicker? Or, why did that go away? And I think that's what you are talking about, Jack, is that behaviors don't just maintain themselves. And it's not like you're going to say, okay, I checked that off the list and I never have to worry about it again. My animal is always going to know what to do. Well, that would be amazing, but it's not going to happen. So I think, the longest of the long term is really maintaining the goal. I mean, what do you think, Jack?
Yeah, and I think that that idea of short-term versus long-term goals, it's really important for us to talk about because what's a short-term goal and what's a long-term goal is going to depend on your individual animal.
Mhm.
I've shown you guys video clips with Grayson, the umbrella cockatoo, where obviously we'll do an hour session on here's the ways that you train and shape a particular behavior. And then I'll show you how Grayson does it in 20 seconds. And there's a lot of work that went into it. There's a lot of training that goes into Grayson. But if your bird doesn't have that same background, it might be something that's a long-term goal. Maybe getting your bird into its crate for a vet visit comfortably, calmly, and safely is a long-term goal for you. It's still a goal worth having. And if you maintain those behaviors, Robin and I like to talk about target training. That should be something that you are getting started with right off the bat because it makes so many other behaviors easier. Target training can make some things that might otherwise be a long-term goal a short-term goal, or they can at least shorten the window of time that it's going to take to accomplish that goal. But if you're not working on maintaining that target training, if your bird loses it, you take that out of your toolbox, that might take you longer. So remember that it is going to depend on your individual bird, your individual setup, your individual life. Robin and I can't give you a this is what this goal is and this is how long it will take for any of your birds because
Your headphones went out, Jack.
Oh,
We don't have audio from you again.
but it looks like you're saying really good stuff. Uh, all right, so I can pretty much tell you what Jack was going to say. That this is how close we've become over the year. There are definitely, they've got to be manageable. It's going to be different. And just because you want something to be a short-term goal doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a short-term goal. So, as much as I'd like to say getting your bird, if your goal is I want my bird to bite less. Okay. So we all want that to be a short-term goal. We want it to be boom, done. It may not be. Hopefully it'll be shorter, but you can't just because you want something to happen quickly doesn't mean that it's going to. You need to pay attention. You need to be very specific when you're creating those goals as to what you're trying to accomplish. Otherwise, if you're like me, um, it's that whole this is going really well. I like this squirrel. And then your goal is out the window and you've moved on to something else, which is fine if you want to add an additional goal. But what do you think, Jack? Did you hear anything that I
yeah,
said while you were gone?
I heard part of it. I got a text message, and apparently my headphones decided you don't want to hear anything else anymore ever again. Um, again, new year, still not great with technology. Um, I take care of living things. I take care of things that poop. If I can get my internet to poop, maybe then I can figure out what's wrong with it. Until that day, I'm doing my best.
That's
So
why we have Nick.
it really is. Y'all really don't understand the amount of work that Nick does to make us look even vaguely competent. Um,
I do little
yes.
things. It's okay. Let's talk about small goals and the short-term goals and long-term goals. So I bet Nick has a whole list of goals that he would like Jack and I to complete. But, Jack and I have made them all into long-term goals. I'm sure Nick thought, oh, that'll be a short-term goal because the technology for Nick is like, oh, it's easy, or he makes it look that way. And so, okay, a perfect example, right? We need goals. And like I said, sometimes you think they're going to be short term, but not so much.
Well, and so while we're talking about us and our challenges with technology, I think that is a great time to point out that when you're working with your animals, when you're setting goals, um, one thing you have to pay attention to is that goal achievable? First and foremost, you can't train your animal to do something they cannot do. I can train my bird to fly across the room and land on my arm. If I wanted to try to train my dog to do the same thing, I would probably be disappointed or maybe very, very excited, but probably disappointed.
Yeah,
So paying attention to those
you've got
things
to
of what your animal can do.
you got to be realistic. I think that's part of it too. We know people like I noticed that Chris Armstrong was on, and Chris has an incredible flighted flock at his house. Well, that's not reality for some people. It may not. It may be where they live, or they've got birds that have big raucous parties and screaming and vocalizing in the morning and then at night, and that's doable if you live on the ranch, but if you live in a condo, not so much. So you want to make sure that you're being specific with your goals and realistic. So we've got to do a definition, Jack, and I don't have my smart glasses with me. Do you?
I do.
Outstanding. Okay,
I don't
so
remember which
Jack,
definition I'm doing, but I'm sure I can figure it out.
what is an approximation?
So, an approximation is a manageable step towards a completed behavior. Couple of
Thank
things
you
to
very
keep
much.
in there. Manageable, meaning you want to break it down to what is going to be accomplishable by an animal. They're not always going to be these. I'm sorry, I can't between the headphones and the little things of the glasses, and I don't normally wear glasses. It's too much going on the side of my head. So I'm going to go or on the side of my head. I'm going to go insane. Um, you want to make it manageable. You want to make sure that you break those steps down as small as they need to be for your animal to be able to get. You don't want the animal to be frustrated. Um, you also don't want the animal to be bored. So even if you have the same behaviors that you're working on, you might need to break them into different approximations because one animal might shoot through certain steps, one might need them broken down a little bit further.
And yeah, I think that's important. So when you start out looking at the completed behavior, so whatever that behavior is that you want to accomplish, whatever your goal is, look at the whole thing and then break it down into those steps. And when you break it down into those steps, that is a very fluid situation and it may change, but you want to at least start with that. So when you've got your steps, your approximations, you've got them in mind, look at them and decide. And once you get started with your training, look at it and decide what can stand alone and what can be put together. So, if you've got an animal that just zips through those first 3 approximations that you created in your plan, you don't want to kind of slow the animal down, and slow your training down and make it, no, I'm sorry, you need to do them one at a time, because we stumble over that. I think it's, I've got a plan. I'm all about the plan, but the plan has to be adaptable. Is it? Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. You've got to be willing to kind of change the plan if that's what's necessary. I've experienced that in training. Have you, Jack?
Yeah, and I think that's part of what makes training a little bit challenging because it's this balance between the rigidity of the schedule and the plan and the flexibility of moving with your animal. And realistically, that's kind of what makes all of animal care a little bit challenging because it's that balancing act between the two. Obviously, we have Robin, who will talk about the importance of the flexibility and the variability of a an enrichment program and providing different things to promote uh, mental stimulation, physical activity, all of those things, those benefits of enrichment that we know are better with variety and flexible scheduling. And then, of course, there's me with the rigidity of scheduling when it comes to these are the days that I like to bleach my water bowls, and these are the days that I like to do all of these, certain tasks. There is a balance between that flexibility and that rigidity in all of animal care, and I think it really does show itself in training as well. So coming up with a plan and knowing how you want to move forward with the plan, but also knowing that you might have to adjust your expectations. You might have to adjust the plan itself, depending on what your animal decides. Because let's be honest, not only do they get a vote in the situation of how training is going to go, I would argue that they get the deciding vote.
I think, yeah, because there's not a lot you can do if they decide to opt out. Then you're kind of stuck, and you can have a great plan, but if you don't read what they're doing and you don't pay attention, then it's not going to work for you. I kind of just had a revelation that we're like the left brain and the right brain of animal care. I think we are. So Bonnie says, I had no problem with biting, and then it began. Oh, yeah. Everything I had learned wasn't working, had to look into distant antecedents to figure out what and how to resolve the issues. Frustrating and upsetting, but ultimately resolved. That's the thing, Bonnie. And I think, we're going to talk about that a little bit further in, but I think you've got to be flexible. And like Jack said, there is that rigidity that happens. You've got your plan. You've gone through the steps of coming up with a plan, figuring out what you think the approximations are going to be. But then you've got to take that step back and you've got to say, okay, how is this working? How is it in reality happening? And then you have to adjust from there. And I really think it's a matter of some introspection as to, again, your expectations, your goal. You don't want to change your goal because that's still the goal that you want to accomplish, but it might kind of take that little turn and then you've got to go with it. Jack, have you ever, and I can say with certainty that I have never completely stuck 100% to a training plan without any adaptation.
Right. And so I usually like to do when I have a training plan, I come up with my training sessions that I'm going to do. And I usually like to try to at least finish a training session. So the,
Right.
very brief 5-minute session that I'm working on. Again, remember, if you guys are doing, if you have to plan what shoes you're wearing for your training session, it's probably too long of a training session for you to be successful with that training plan. I have advocated for, oh God, a while now, as long as we've been doing these. I like doing my coffee training sessions. I do a training session in the time that it takes for my coffee to pour in the morning. It's a great amount of time for my animal to stay interested, for me to get some things done, but nobody gets bored. I usually like to finish a training session, but if I see that things aren't going the way that I like, if we're not mastering an approximation, maybe we need to shape it down. Maybe we need to break it down into even more steps because my animal isn't getting them. And there have been behaviors that I have tried where the animal offers me something else. And on reflection, that other thing that it's offering is useful and a good behavior that I want. So instead, I can adjust the behavior to be this new thing that I'm already getting volunteered by the animal. And there are, of course, others. This is probably the one that every animal trainer ever is going to get mad if I tell you guys this. There are some training plans that are abandoned. I had this idea, I've seen this other animal do this, and I'm going to train my animal to do that. And that's that animal. When I'm trying to work this training plan with my animal's like, no, thank you. Um, and that does happen. And I think it's important for people to know that because even if your animal doesn't do everything, I feel like we cover this topic a lot with parrots and talking. If your parrot doesn't talk, it's still an amazing animal. You can still have an incredible relationship with it. There are still so many other things you can get it to do. So even if you're not getting a particular behavior, if you have to give one up, that doesn't mean all training for that animal is a bust. It just means that that one particular behavior either wasn't working or it wasn't going to work for the amount of effort that animal would need to go into that behavior versus the amount of effort you have available to put into that behavior.
You are absolutely right. And I think one of the things to look at is if you're getting a different so say you're trying to work on decreasing a behavior that you find negative. So maybe it's screaming, maybe it's biting, whatever that is, you're trying to decrease that behavior. So you're going to have to replace it. You're going to have to find another behavior to take its place. And you may have one in mind that, okay, I'm going to get this animal to do X. Well, maybe X is not working, and your animal will let you know that X is not working, and you may even see an increase in the behavior that you're trying to decrease. But once you see that, you know that, okay, it's time to change, or your animal may show you a different behavior that is a nice substitute. So we talk a lot about videotaping, when you're doing training sessions, and this is just another example and another case of why it's a good thing to do. So if you're videotaping and you notice that this just isn't going the way I wanted it to go, let me watch the video. Oh, okay, this is happening instead. Maybe I can capitalize on that, adjust my training plan a little bit, and go with what my animal is willing to do. That may not be exactly what I had planned on. Yeah, Bonnie says she had to change her and what she was doing. And I think that's really important, Bonnie. I think that's a great approach because a lot of times we do oh, well, my bird won't do this and my bird won't do that. And I could never get my bird to do X. And the thing is, you sometimes need to think about what you're doing. So, if you're looking at, okay, maybe it's not me, maybe it's the approach, maybe it's not my animal, maybe it's the approach. Excuse me. And you need to think about, do I need to completely change my approach to get that to work? So that's great, Bonnie, that you recognize that and you were able to change that. I see that there's a comment from Michelle. Nick, if you can put that up there. How do you replace an unwanted behavior without the bird thinking it's a reward for doing it? So what you do is you get another behavior going on, Michelle, and then you reward that behavior. So there's no reward there's no reinforcement for the unwanted behavior, but if you're given something else. So if you've got a bird that's screaming and you want to get rid of that, your goal is to decrease the screaming, and you get a bird that will suddenly whisper to you or that will sing a song, that's what you're reinforcing. Jack, do you have any more suggestions for Michelle? I think, did you miss all of that?
Yeah. No, so yeah, replacing an unwanted behavior. Again, like you were saying, Robin, it really comes down to that, think about what you want that animal to be doing instead. Even just that change in your mindset can really help you figure out how to develop a training plan. If you're thinking, I want my bird to stop screaming. You can't convey that to the bird. That's really, really difficult to try to work with. But oh, my bird is sitting there and being quiet and interacting with foot toys quietly. I'm also going to reinforce this. Or, oh, I see that if I give you these types of enrichment, you're focused on them and you're quiet. So we can use those because you're then giving me the behavior that I want. I can then reinforce that quiet behavior. So don't try to focus on what you don't want, focus on what you want instead. It does just that change in your mindset really can help you figure out a training plan that's going to work for your animal.
Definitely. And Julie brings up a good point. She says, before I choose a substitute behavior, I try to understand what's the reward for that behavior I'm trying to squelch. So what's driving that behavior? And if it's something that, if it's attention, then you can give attention for a different behavior. So yeah, no, Julie, that's a really good point. Thank you for making that.
Yeah, and
So
I actually have a good example of that. So Mika, an umbrella cockatoo that we've shown you guys before. Um, Most of the year he is in his large outdoor flight. This time of year they get pulled to smaller heated areas. Mika is saying that he would like more attention, particularly from me. So one of his favorite things to do is he will reach through the bar spacing and grab with his foot, and it can be a little bit alarming. He wants attention, and he gets very, very excited if he reaches out and grabs somebody and they jump or they yell or what was that? Because that is obviously very, very exciting. So one of the things that we've had to do, it's a two-pronged approach to that, is one, we have to make sure that that bird is getting, a good amount of socialization, interaction, pulling him out of that cage, taking him around to see and do other things. But also, I cannot be even slightly distracted and easily startled when I'm doing things in the vicinity of him. I have to be aware of the fact that yeah, he's probably going to reach out to grab me. And the reaction is what's reinforcing it. He's getting really excited about that. So I can't offer that as a form of reinforcement. So making that plan and knowing that might happen is part of shaping that behavior.
So I know that Cindy Leopard is on, and Cindy's sitting out there. I know she is going, it's Lola. I know it's Lola. Because Cindy and I had talked about this a little bit. And then I saw that she posted today on Facebook that Lola was going to get they were going to get a little bit of help with that. So yeah, her male umbrella does it to her all the time, but he's the problem child. So maybe that's a little bit of help there, Cindy. I don't know. But we all kind of go through that, and we set these things up, and we want to do these things, and we want to get better behavior. And we just need to be kind of aware of what we're asking for. And so, we talk about goals and moving forward with goals and the approximations we need to break things down into. But the question then is, how do I say I can check that box off? I did it. How do I get to that achieved place? And for me, and Jack, you're going to love this. This is right up your alley. You're going to love this. Measurable goals. Huh? Right? Okay. So making, no, my goal was to be more creative, which is not super measurable. Maybe it's create 10 more things. I don't know. Some of you may or may not know that years ago I worked in human services. And when we were working with people, we needed to create attainable, measurable goals. And it was always, do this many of this by this date. So we're probably not going to go that specific. But Jack, how would you create a measurable goal?
Okay, so one of the ways that I like to think of this for people You want to think of the idea of objective versus subjective information. A measurable goal should include something objective. So Robin's idea, if she's going to be more creative is subjective. If you just use more, or if you wanted to say Robin's going to be less creative, which I don't think anyone wants you to have that as a goal, Robin, but for the sake of argument, more or less without anything else, they're subjective, because how much does that really mean? But if you go with your idea of I would like to be more creative, I would like to create 10 more toys this year. 10 is measurable. Even if you don't accomplish it, you can have an understanding of your progress within a measurable goal. If you create 6 new toys this year, you didn't hit your goal, but you still are further down your goal than you were. Whereas I'm going to be more creative. Okay, well, this year, was I really more creative? I mean, I made a couple of new toys, but is that really having subjective information is useful, but having it paired with objective information definitely helps you with your goals. I actually had this thought of how to explain this to people the other day when I was at the dentist. I hate the dentist. I am terrified of the dentist. That is honestly my least favorite place in the world. Possibly even worse than an airplane. I hate airplanes and I hate the dentist, and that's about all I've got. But I make up for lack of quantity with quality of hatred of those things. I hate the dentist. I hate airplanes. You could probably tell that I was stressed and anxious at the dentist because I was fidgeting and I was very tense and I had my eyes darting places. But those are subjective things. Those don't tell you exactly how anxious I was. Then we got my blood pressure, which at the time was 175 over 140, which terrified the vet, or not the vet tech. I don't go to a vet. I don't have a vet tech. The dental tech. Luckily, the dentist is familiar with me, and she was like, "No, he's fine. Take his blood pressure again when he's leaving," and it had already gone down significantly by that point. And that actually helps demonstrate the point. Having objective information, I could know. In that instance, my animal, in this case me, was very stressed in that situation. Once we moved out of that situation, using that objective information again, we can see that it's already so much better. So using objective information, things that are clearly defined, can help you set really measurable goals.
Absolutely. And it's about, so Kelly says, back to the responses, keeping a poker face can be hard when an undesirable behavior pops up, especially one that happens to be initially hilarious. We have all been there. It's that, whether it's your bird or your child or your coworker, it happens, right? And so, but it's not about, I agree with you, Kelly, that you don't want to give it a big reaction, but you can give it a reaction, and then maybe you modify that behavior a little bit. So you take it from what is truly hysterical and hilarious to something that's maybe a little more appropriate, or something that you gotta go round and round with it. You've got to kind of change it up a little bit, because it's that, I'm sorry, but when a cockatoo is biting you, I don't really care who you are. There's going to be a reaction, and you can do the stone face as much as you want, but your heartbeat's going up. All those things are happening, and your animals, whether they be birds or other animals, they're going to be able to tell that you're experiencing that level of adrenaline or stress or whatever it may be. So you can keep your face as stony as you want, but you're still gonna give that behavior.
Well, and that situation with Mika, of me knowing he's going to reach out, he's going to grab me with his foot, so I need to make sure that I'm being very stoic, not reactionary. The reason that I know I need to be like that is because the first time he did it, I reacted. I'll tell you guys right now, because I think it's helpful. no animal trainer does everything completely perfectly. Um, it's not that you get every single thing done perfect. It's okay, well, that happened. How am I going to move forward with this now? And that's why I thought this session tonight of how to move forward with our goals is a really important topic because, setting goals is great, but it really is just the first step. And especially when it comes to training animals, working with animals, there are so many nuances, there are so many paths that you can take to get to a finished goal. And there's also so many different random paths you can take, and you have no idea where you got and how you got there.
And I think that's part of why people talk about training as a science and as an art form as well. Because it's a lot of people say, oh well, the longer you do it, the better you get at it. That's not necessarily true. I mean, some people just they have an innate ability that is just there, and they're great trainers right out of the gate. Other people practice their skills, but whichever you are, I think that you kind of learn the tricks of the trade through time. And you learn what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and you move forward with that. And I think, when we talk about um, that response, or you get the behavior that you're looking for and you maybe check off that box, one repetition does not mean that you have met that approximation, because we all know that there's that bird that does that, or that animal that does something right, and you go, oh, that was it, yes, oh, reinforce, 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 and it never happens again, and you're like,
I
yeah.
So Robin and I have talked about this. Probably the one we most commonly see when you are crate training your animal and you first get them to step into that crate the very first time and you're excited, you slam the door because the bird is in the crate. That bird is never going to go in that crate again because
Nope.
it was probably iffy about going into the crate to begin with. And now it's become this terrifying thing. So, yeah, I think making sure that you recognize that just because an animal does an approximation once doesn't mean they have the greatest grasp on it. On the same token, if your animal has a behavior or an approximation that they have done over and over and over again consistently, and then one day they're just like, I don't know what that is. I don't get it. I don't know what that is. That happens. And
Mhm.
maybe you need to move back a few approximations. There's so many different ways to approach this, but it does happen with different animals to everyone. One thing I wanted to point out that came up in the chat. So we're talking about that cockatoo reaching through, grabbing people. Someone asked, is that a bad behavior? And I would say it depends. For me, it is not something that I want to encourage because I do have other people on my team who will work with these animals who are not as comfortable working with the animals. It might be very startling for them. But for you, maybe that's not that big a deal. Maybe you don't really care. Maybe that's a great way for you to interact with your animal. If you are working in animal protected contact and they're reaching a foot out to interact with you, maybe that's a good sign. That's showing that that animal wants to interact with you. The underlying point here, I would say, is it depends on your animal, and you have to determine in that situation if it's something good, bad, or indifferent. It may not be something you care about at all. At least that's my take on it. Robin, what do you think?
No, I agree with you, Jack. I think that it's really, we talk about it, the study of one all the time, and it definitely is. And Cindy, not knowing Lola, not sure, what happens after the grab and all that, and it really depends where it goes from there. Is it something and that is a positive interaction? Is it something that turns into something that you're not considering positive? So it really depends on what works. It definitely could be a safe way for you guys to interact, where you don't have such a great history with him. So you have to look at it from your situation There are animals that I would absolutely allow, different people. I would be comfortable with something like that, but there are other animals that it may be okay for me, but it's not okay when someone comes to visit. It's not okay when someone's doing a tour through, the back of a facility. It may not work. So you've got to look at what's the situation and what's the expectation in that situation. Yeah, so if he's putting a hole in your shirt or your hand, Cindy, no, not so much. Then it's not okay. You really want, to look at, and I think that takes us to the next point we wanted to talk about was what does a completed approximation look like? What level of completion are you looking for? Is it, it's got to be exactly this far, if you're asking for a wave, is it, in order for me to consider it completed, is it a full on open and close? Is it, just I've opened my foot a little bit and then closed it? What is the level? You set that level of completion. Do you agree with that, Jack?
I absolutely agree with that. And I think, I mean, we've talked about this before. We're going to keep talking about this because it depends on that individual animal. Sometimes the level of completion, even for the same behavior on different animals, won't look the same. So a good example I have of that for you guys is scale training. We've shown you guys Grayson, the umbrella cockatoo scale training. He is a pro at it. Part of Grayson's behavior is he has to stay focused. He has to do it calmly. There isn't wing flapping. There isn't anything hectic or chaotic. He steps up calmly. He steps down on the perch calmly. He gets reinforced for all of that. I have a green wing macaw who does not have the same history of training, does not have the same comfort level with the scale training. Her stepping up onto my arm calmly, we're reinforcing the bejesus out of that. Maybe it takes 3 or 4 minutes when she sees, wait, you want me? I see the scale platform. You're going to want me to go to the scale platform. Slowly walking over to the scale platform is going to take a little bit more time. We're going to have to shape that behavior a little bit more, you know, a little bit different. Maybe the wings are going to come up because she's excited. Maybe she's going to try to turn around to move away from the scale. I'm going to have to shift my expectations based on what my animal is doing, what their history is, what their temperament is. There's so many factors that come into play. I can tell you guys right now from experience, if I am having a bad day, if I'm in a bad mood, if I'm frustrated, that alone can be enough to change the kind of behaviors that I am getting from my animal. Sometimes they're like, no, dad's mad. I don't want to interact with him. Um, I know we had someone in the chat asking about aggression with their birds and if it could be a reaction to other birds, other things in the environment. And I think right here, this is a great time for us to point out that, those reactions, those changes can be so many different things. There are so many things that come into play, even things we don't think about, which is why Robin and I have always encouraged you guys to record your training sessions because that will give you a little bit more information on what's going on around you, what's going on in the environment, what is your animal reacting to. But yeah, I definitely think you're sometimes going to have to change those approximations for your individual animals, and you have to be the one to set what is an appropriate approximation for that animal.
And I think too, Michelle's question here about due to jealousy of other birds and a form of attention. So jealousy is a tough thing to pin down. We tend to anthropomorphize jealousy like crazy. It's, he's jealous of my husband. He's jealous of my partner. He's jealous of, that I'm watching TV. So it's really, you've got to be real careful with that word. And look at what is the bird getting out of the aggression. So is it you immediately stop attending to the other birds or giving them any attention and turn your attention to that bird? Julie had mentioned what's driving that behavior. And I think that's really important to look at because honestly, birds compete for position on branches in the wild. they compete for food, they compete for mates. But I don't know that I would ever term it jealousy. And Michelle, this is not a commentary on you because we all use it. We absolutely do. But you just, we've got to be careful. There's a fine line that we walk when we look at what our birds are doing and why they're doing it.
Well, and yeah, I think it's especially when you look at the animals that are a lot more intelligent, it's trying to balance like we don't want to give them human emotions because we know they're not experiencing emotions the same way we do. We know they're not experiencing the world the same way we do. They look at it differently, they interact with it differently. But on the flip side, human emotions can help us, you know, try to pinpoint what's going on with our animals and have an understanding of how they're reacting to things. Um,
Mhm.
that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the emotion they're feeling. So to give you guys an example, Grayson the umbrella cockatoo, if I do training sessions with different birds, I usually have to plan on doing a training session with him first. If I do training sessions with other birds, my first thought would be he's jealous. He doesn't want to interact with me. Well, that's not as helpful. Instead, I have found if I do training sessions with other birds first, Grayson is not as willing to participate in training sessions, or his reaction to set cues is going to be diminished based on what is expected. Which is why a lot of times, I'll tell you guys right now, if you start talking to an animal trainer, the way that they catch themselves from dipping into anthropomorphizing is it almost goes very cold and clinical, and
Mhm.
that's just to help figure out, again, subjective versus objective. Subjective, it can feel this way, but objectively, here's what is happening in this situation.
Yeah, and it's funny when I was commenting on Michelle's comment there, I didn't want I was not in any way, shape, or form calling you out, Michelle. It was really, it's that exactly what Jack just talked about. It appears to be, that cold clinical, but sometimes that cold clinical helps us define better what we're looking at and what we're seeing. And if you can take it and it's breaking down a behavior. It's not, and if we really want to get down to it, I think um, aggressive is a huge one that we use. Oh, the bird was being aggressive. The animal was being aggressive. What aggressive looks like to me is very different from what it looks like to Jack, is different from what it looks like to all of you. And I think, we can't say those well, we can, but, it's from a trainer's point of view, it's easier to define what's happening. Okay, he lunged, he bit, he screamed, whatever that behavior is. And, you know, what's the function of that behavior, and then how am I going to address that? Because you wouldn't say he's being, you can definitely turn things into a positive interaction, Cindy. You could take that foot grab and make it, if he does it gently and doesn't pull back on it, there's a reinforcer for it. But I think, if we're going to talk in terms of that's aggressive, well, how am I going to fix aggressive? I'm going to be nicer. Ooh, none of those are measurable. I mean, what do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I think when we're talking about our animals' behaviors, I think there's always a way to shape them and make them different and better. It's all a question of, are you willing to take that step back, look at it, and see what you can get out of this? Because I'll tell you guys right now, even something like screaming, um, people right now are going to say, there's no way you can turn screaming into a good thing. I do presentations with birds for small children. If I can get a parrot scream on cue to demonstrate just how loud parrots can be, then that can be something that I can use to help educate kids about things to know before getting a parrot, things to know about a parrot. So for me, even I wasn't ready for that one and I didn't cue that, Nick. so you're not getting reinforced. But who said yes? I didn't cue it, Nick, but apparently Robin did. So Robin's going to reinforce you later. And that can be one of the challenges of two trainers. But you could shape behaviors and turn them into something positive if you're willing to work for it. So yeah, like that bird that's reaching through and grabbing you. I think we had Lori point out that you can do things like a nail trim, shaking hands, high five. All of those can be great behaviors based on what you're working with. You know, it's all about taking that step back and looking at that interaction, looking at what your animal's getting out of it. But there's so many different ways that you can use different behaviors. When we say there's so many paths you can take, we are not kidding. There are multiple paths that you can take just with your animal for whatever behavior you want. But even if you want one very specific behavior, there's still multiple paths to get there, to that one single behavior. So just keep that in mind. I think for a lot of animal trainers, one thing they don't do is be nice to themselves. And I think that's really important. Being nice to yourself and recognizing the progress you're making, the way that you're shaping things is really important. What do you think, Robin?
It's true because it can be thankless at times, when you're doing training and you're like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere, or maybe you've set your goal a little bit higher than it should have been, or maybe you set those expectations, because we've got to have expectations, right? We've got to have high expectations, and then you kind of adjust. I'm not saying abandon, I'm just saying, like Jack said, be kind to yourself. Be reasonable with what you're asking for. You're not going to take that bird that's never been trained at all, and suddenly, have him doing 17 tricks in a week's time. It's not going to happen. Well, it might, but it's probably not going to happen. So you want to be reasonable and you want to be kind, to yourself. That it's so important. Training can be wonderfully rewarding. And it can also be brutally frustrating. And I think that's something to remember.
In the same session.
Right? It's true. It's so true.
Yeah. I have had training sessions where I have felt magical. I have this deep connection to the natural world. I have had training sessions where I have felt like I am the worst animal trainer ever. I don't know anything. I don't know anything, and I'm horrible, and I don't know why I exist. I have had training sessions that are everywhere in between, and I have had training sessions that oscillate between the extremes in the same session. So it happens to everyone.
Mm-hmm. And you don't give up. I mean, so I find that happens most often working with corvids, because we all know that they're way smarter than we are. But it's definitely a matter of appreciating the little things, appreciating, okay, I made that tiny step. I met that very small approximation, and I was able to kind of move on from there. And maybe it takes another week and a half or 2 weeks before I get that next approximation down. But you've got to kind of focus on, all right, I had that success. This animal had that success. And I think that's something else. I mean, this talk has kind of taken on a life of its own that I don't think Jack and I necessarily anticipated tonight, but I think it's good. And one of the things that we think about, we get very possessive of our skills and our training and the accomplishments that happen. And I think we need to remember that it's a partnership. It's Jack, how many times have we said it's communication? We're communicating to our animal, they're communicating back, and we need to kind of both take credit for that.
Yeah, I think that's the really important thing to remember when it comes to any kind of animal training, animal interactions. There are people who will believe that animal training is making an animal do something, imposing your will on an animal. And I don't remotely think that's the case. I think it's the closest you're going to get to a conversation with your animal, and there is a reason that you're doing it. So I'm going to share this because I love sharing this, and I'm going to share this every single chance I get, Robin. You've heard this like 4 times already. So I have a two male camels, dromedary camels. Dromedary camels are known for being more than a little bit difficult. Um, for their veterinary needs, we actually see the Texas A&M Veterinary Hospital teaching hospital vets who have not only remarked on our camels, they've actually shared them to social media, talking about the socialization that goes into those animals and the training that we've done with them that makes their care so good. And for me, I'm going to be honest, for me, that's a wonderful accomplishment, knowing that I've done that work with those animals and other people are seeing it. But the only reason that's working is because the animals are getting something out of it too. They're building that relationship with us. They're getting
Mhm.
those food reinforcers, which I'm not going to pretend they don't like, but it's also not the only thing they're working for. And at the end of the day, that relationship that we've built, that training that we've used, that is then being used for their medical care, ensures that they can be voluntary participants, bleh, voluntary participants in their medical care. The vet can get a closer look at them. Those animals will be taken better care of. So even though the training is something that I'm very excited about, at the end of the day, the thing to be most excited about is those animals are going to get optimized welfare, which I think is something we should all be striving for.
You are absolutely right. And I think, so that's really important that through that training and the work that we're all doing, when I say all, I mean all of you that are listening and all of us that are working professionally doing this. I think one of the things we need to remember is how it is really enhancing animal welfare. It's not just, oh, it makes my life easier if he stops screaming. Yeah, it does. But it also may make him, if he's a bird that needs to be rehomed, it may make him better off in his next home. So you want to think about what's the point? Where am I going with all of this? And the other piece is you need to consider, and I think this is, we had a lot of other stuff we were going to touch on, but I really think it's important to talk about that there are so many variables when you're dealing with a living creature. It's not going to be perfect. If that were the case and somebody had that magic wand that could make things go exactly how we planned every single time, they would be, I would just kind of stop doing what I'm doing and let them handle it because
I would like to borrow the
the
magic
very,
wand.
I know, right? Well, they probably wouldn't let you have it because it's pretty damn valuable. But I mean, I think we want to be prepared to have things go wrong. We want to know that, it's never perfect. And Jack and I will be the first ones to admit, yeah, no, stuff goes sideways a lot when you're training. And you just kind of, okay, I'm going to regroup and I'm going to figure this out. And you can't be 100% certain how your animal is going to behave. You may have this bird that you've trained all these wonderful things and they've got great behaviors and they're quiet and they don't bite and they do all these things. And suddenly new variables come in. Somebody comes over to visit, they're doing construction next door or down the street. Things are going to change. And you need to be able to kind of roll with that. What do you think, Jack?
Oh, for a second, like your face froze in position too. I was like, did I break the internet again? I hope not. I need to figure out what reinforcer my internet likes, and I just need a pouch full of that. I think it's my
Nick
tears
knows.
though, so I don't know if that's usable. No. Oh, okay. That's what the internet needs. Um, no, I think that idea of training, we got so many different training goals from so many different people. If you guys want to scroll down on the Leather Elves page once we're done with this live stream, you can pull up that video we posted for New Year's Eve. and it'll show you the different goals that people had in terms of maybe training voluntary nail trims, weight trims, training a bird to put on a harness voluntarily. There was a lot of training. And I think that's definitely great because training makes so many different aspects of animal care more accessible. It makes them easier to manage. Um, so I think learning how to move forward with training is really, really important. Now, Robin and I have done a lot of sessions on training already. You can always go back and watch those on the High Redbird YouTube channel. But we also have a ton of sessions on training coming up as well,
Mhm.
which I am super excited about the session we're going to do next week, which somehow or it was not initially planned to be this way, but it's almost like the session we're doing next week is a direct continuation of the conversation we're having right now.
Mhm.
Am I allowed to
It
talk
yeah,
about it yet?
yeah, you are. No, you definitely are, because I'm really excited about it. I think people will be excited about watching. So,
So, and we have a fun, a very fun special guest that we're going to have able to contribute next week. Hey, Mr. Gunners, come here. Come here. He was napping. He's got to stretch first. Oh my goodness. So Gunner will actually be on the live stream next week. I know, I woke you up. And we'll also have Daniel Sigmund, who you guys have seen before, but Gunner is a far more special guest. Huh? Will you give me a kisses? Thank you. Um,
Michelle's got a
now,
question here, Jack, before you go any further. Are we training for parrots or
okay.
all animals? So all animals, Michelle. We talk primarily about parrots, but a lot of it applies. And Jack and I both have experience with other animals. And you'll see Mr. Gunner right there will be feature significantly next week in our live stream. So yeah, it's we call it flock talk, but it's really about it's really about all animals. Laura, are you being fresh? Can you please demonstrate how to get your birds to whisper? It's so it's when that little quiet sound comes out. That's when you reinforce. Lori, we can talk about that. Absolutely. It's doable. Whispering is possible, and you don't have to be a whisperer to make that happen. So,
uh,
yes, Jack.
yeah, so for next week, we've actually had a lot of people commenting on a video that I posted on the High Redbird group, and it was Gunner and Daniel interacting with each other. Gunner likes attention, and he will use his paw to let you know, hey, you're not petting me. And Danny would actually start petting him. So Robin and I had the idea that we would cover in this session who is training who, because this 20-second video clip really demonstrates that animal training is a conversation between you and your animal. The tenets of operant conditioning that we're using to work with our animals, they're also using to work with us. So we definitely want to dive into that, showcase the different things that are going on. You guys will also get the benefit of seeing just how much information you can milk out of a 20-second clip of a training session. So I think that's great. But it should be just a lot of fun. Rob and I are very excited about that session next week.
It's gonna be good. And Michelle, yes, Flock Talk is on every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So there is a lot of there's just a lot of experience that Jack and I bring to the table. Um, you're absolutely right, Kelly. It is the same in teaching toddler behaviors. In my other life, many, many, many years ago, I worked with human behavior. So yeah, it's the same science. It's just how you finesse it and how you work with it. So all right. I think we've gone a little overtime tonight. But oh, Bev has very kind grays that whisper till they know she's awake. Bev, we're going to have you on as a guest so you can teach everybody how that works. Um, but all right. We want to thank you guys for listening. Like we said, like us on the Leather Elves and High Redbird, and definitely follow us on Facebook. Think about going to Parrot Festival. It's absolutely worth it. It's a great time. And one other thing, the Leather Elves are working on, we're working on a DIY project. So it's a DIY group, and that'll be coming up in the next couple of weeks. I have to get my act together, and then Nick will help me make it look pretty. But yeah, we're going to work on, because people are really expressing that they want to do some of that, creating, and Jack always does great DIY projects on the High Redbird page, on the High Redbird YouTube channel. You can check it out. So welcome to 2022, you guys. This was a fun session. I think you really challenged Jack and I to think tonight. So we really do appreciate it. Anything to say, Jack?
Thank you guys so much. You, like always, you made this a great session. You always make it so much fun for Robin and I. So we do want to thank you guys so much. We encourage you guys, again, if you haven't already, like the Leather Elves page on Facebook. You'll get a notification every time we do a live stream. We do these live streams every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can watch them directly on the Leather Elves page. You can also subscribe to the High Redbird YouTube channel. That way, any sessions you might have missed, any sessions you want to watch again, you can always go back and watch them. They're part of a playlist right over there. But thank you guys so much. You make this so much fun.
Frank, just to answer your question, Diane Allen won the Toy a Month for a year. So, way to go, Diane. And we're talking to Diane about how we're going to make that happen. So you guys take care, and hopefully we'll see you next week for Who's Training Who, Friday night at 7 p.m. on Flock Talk. Take care, you guys. Have a great week.